Hey everyone, Jesse here with eTrailer. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Curt RVi Shadow 2 flat toe braking system. We'll get into more details about everything once I get it installed on our neighbor's vehicle, but I just wanted to kind of lay it out so you could take a look at everything. It comes with everything we need to install. Here we have the booster box, the shadow box, and the Bullseye wireless monitor. And then you got all of your hoses, your wires, your breakaway switch, and then our cylinder here. This is what actually pulls the brake pedal. So it's really a complete kit. A braking system is important not only to keep you safe when you're flat towing, but also to keep you legal in all 50 states. So you bought your motorhome most likely to travel across different states. So it's important to be legal as you're traveling. You definitely don't want to get a ticket or anything like that. That could ruin your vacation. Also, I really like a permanent braking solution over a portable, just because once it's installed, you really don't have to mess with it at all, except for dialing in your settings on the Bullseye monitor. Whereas with a portable, you'll have to find a place to store that and get it set up every time, and we know that can just be a hassle. Here's a closer look at our system installed on our neighbor's vehicle. The booster box and the shadow box, I mounted both of these on top of our fuse box lid here. You can really mount these anywhere. The only stipulation being is you will have to access all of your ports and plugs. And also the shadow box has a couple arrows on it, and you want those arrows pointed forward. So the shadow box here, this is really the brains of the operation. This is where you're going to plug in all of your cables and your breakaway switch. Also, really neat feature with this braking system is it's able to charge the battery on your towed vehicle. So that's where you would plug it in through the shadow box here. So that's just a really neat feature that this has that a lot of other braking systems don't, because otherwise you would be having to install a whole different component like a charge line to make sure that you don't get stuck with a dead battery. Our booster box also mounted here. Really, this is just a little air compressor that will send air to our cylinder. The cylinder here, I just have it zip tied down to this hose. Really, you can mount it anywhere. You just want it secured so it's not moving around and banging. But this is where all of your action happens as far as pulling the brake pedal on your towed vehicle. There's a cable here that is anchored down with some jam nuts onto our firewall. And I really mounted it here because the cable is very long and you want to stay away from your steering components and your exhaust. So I just used a route behind the engine here to just cut out some of that slack. As I said, there is an anchor point on the firewall here. So here's a look from the inside of the vehicle. At that anchor point comes your cable, comes out of there and attaches to our bracket. So this bracket is just mounted on our brake pedal arm here, and that's what's going to pull that brake pedal down. And the Bullseye wireless monitor is very easy to use and get set up initially. It's just really nice to have this monitor here to make sure everything's working as it should, and also to have a manual brake button right here. That's just great in case you're starting to feel some sway down the highway. You can kind of calm that down by using the manual brake. The kit does come with a breakaway switch included, and this is just here in case of a catastrophic disconnect. This will get pulled out, and that will apply the brakes to your towed vehicle to help you come to a safe stop. Also, while we're down here, the battery charge wires, it simply plugs into your shadow box, but then down here you will have to tie it into your diode wiring, which is a very simple process. You'll just put the ground in with your diode ground, and then that charge line wire will go into your center post. A couple more really nice features is that this is a proportional braking system. And what that means is the harder you're stopping in your motorhome, then the harder the flat-toed brake will be depressed, because it has a built-in inertia sensor, so it can really sense that. A lot of people prefer that over some of the other style braking systems just because it seems to be the most comfortable and most responsive. Also, the Shadow is able to sense when you're towing, so the second you start towing, it will automatically know that it needs to be in tow mode and it needs to work those brakes in your towed vehicle. All in all, if you're looking for a permanent braking system for your flat-towed vehicle, I really like this new option by Curt. It seems to be really well built, really well thought out. You don't have to do any wiring with the installation. It's all just plug and go. The only really difficult part of that installation, in my opinion, is you do have to drill through the firewall. So on a vehicle like this Bronco, it's really not that big of a deal. We didn't have a lot of stuff in our way, but I could see it getting pretty difficult on some smaller engine bays with more components to them. If after watching this video you still have any questions or concerns about this braking system, feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to get you pointed in the right direction. As I said, the installation process really isn't too difficult, at least as far as braking systems go, or permanent braking systems. I really like the fact that you don't have to splice into wires as opposed to some of the other systems out there. But I'd understand if you're not looking to do this yourself, you're probably installing other flat toe components and it can really become a handful. Check out our dealer locator. You can find someone local to you that would be happy to get this set up for you. If you are looking to see how this gets installed, then follow along and I'll walk you through the process. Today we're going to be installing the Shadow 2 on a Ford Bronco, so depending on your setup, things may kind of be orientated a little bit differently, but the main concept is going to be the same. To begin our installation, I like to kind of map out where I'm going to be mounting both our shadow box and our booster box inside the engine bay here. The only things you really have to pay attention to is the shadow box has two arrows. These need to be facing towards the front of the towed vehicle or facing forwards. And then with the booster box, it can be mounted in any orientation. You just want to make sure that you have easy access to your fittings and your plug. So I already kind of planned it ahead, and I was just kind of checking out where I had to mount it in the engine bay. I think right on top of the fuse box for both will be perfect. That'll keep them out of the way and away from any moving parts. So what I'll do is pop the cover off of our fuse box. That way when I'm self-tapping this down, I don't have to worry about damaging any fuses. So it's just 3 tabs. I'll pop it up and I'll get these mounted. So now for our booster box, I'm using the larger black screws. You could also mount both of these using zip ties. I just like screws for a nice sturdy connection. But I'll get these all screwed in, and we need 3 points of contact is what the instructions ask for. So at least 3 of these tabs will get screws. And for our shadow box, we'll use the smaller screws. And one thing worth mentioning is you want to make sure that you can reach your battery with the duplex wire that's attached to it. So just make sure you're within reach of the battery, which we are with where we're putting ours. With those mounted up, we can reinstall our fuse panel top. Just be careful, kind of make sure that you're not going to hit any fuses before you go pushing on it. Now on the inside of the vehicle, we need to mark our hole that will drill through the firewall. So what I'll do is push down on the brake pedal, and then you want a straight line from right above where the rubber part of the brake pedal is. So on some vehicles you can just push it down far enough and probably hit the firewall with your marker, but I'm kind of eyeballing it. I got it marked out. So I cut out our carpeting so we can get access to our firewall here. Now I'll use a punch, mark where I'm going to drill. We're going to drill this out to 5/16 of an inch. Just make sure before you start drilling that there's nothing on the other side. Our vehicle has an electric brake booster. There's really nothing over there that we're worried about drilling through, but depending on your setup, you'll want to make sure that you are clear of anything that you can damage. And then if you are looking like you're going to hit something, you do have the ability to move where your mounting point is by up to 2 inches each way. So I'll start drilling our hole. With that drilled out, we'll take our pole wire and feed it up into the engine bay, because we're going to use this to pull our cable from our cylinder. Now we need to get ready to route our cable coming out of our cylinder. Before I do that, I'm going to take off one of the nuts and star washers because those will be tightened down from the inside of the vehicle. And then for this one, I'm just going to thread it up a little bit and just do that so that we don't have to worry about trying to tighten it down on this end because it's going to be very hard to reach. Then from there, I pulled that pull wire through. I'm going to use some electrical tape to attach to it. So when we tape this, just to make it hold on better, we're going to tape around the threads and the wire here. You don't want to add too much tape because we do have to pull all of this through the firewall and it's going to be pretty tight. So just make a thin layer of tape and it should hold on as you pull it. Then I'll also add some tape onto the end of this just so it all comes together. Now we'll slide our star washer over our cable and over the threads and get our nut sent the same way. And we'll thread that on and tighten it down with a 1/2 inch wrench. So our instructions said it was a 1/2 inch wrench, but I'm finding with ours the 13mm wrench is fitting a lot better. So depending on yours, I don't know if it's just a misprint or if our hardware is a little different, but just get that tightened nice and tight. Now I'll take our pedal bracket here. We're going to feed our cable through this hole and just leave it loose for now. And we're going to mount this on the left side of the brake pedal. If you remember, that's kind of how I lined up the hole that we drilled. So we want that cable in as straight of a line as possible. So we'll slip it over the brake pedal arm. Then I'll slide our other bolt through there and get the nut installed. And when we tighten this down, we want it at a straight angle, and also you want the bolts to be as close to the pedal arm assembly as possible. So when you're tightening it down with a 5/32 inch Allen wrench, just make sure you're kind of scooting those bolts together to get as tight as possible. Now I like to come back to the back of the vehicle just to make sure that our brake lights aren't on, because if they are, then we'll need to loosen up that tension, but ours are not, so we're all set. As far as mounting our cylinder, we can really mount it anywhere, but we have a lot of extra slack on the cable, so you want to find a place where you can safely route it away from any hot or moving parts, and then just simply zip tie it to, say, a hose like this. So I ran mine behind. Also, at any point, if you see that your cable may be getting close to something moving, you can zip tie it. We just don't want any very sharp bends on it that might restrict our cable inside of it. But other than that, you can mount it anywhere. One thing to mention is you will have to connect an airline to this, and in the kit you'll have limited airline. So I just recommend mocking it up and then making sure that you'll have enough to reach. Now we're ready to hook up our towed battery charge. So what we'll do is plug this end into that RV spot on our shadow box. And then I've already routed it, but just find a way to route it towards the front of your vehicle to your 6-pole, just avoiding any hot or moving parts. And then we bring it down here. So this red one's going to go to our center post. That's for our charge or our positive. And then the black one, I'm actually going to tie in with our ground. So what I'll do is back this screw off. I'll twist the white wire that we have from our diode wirings, that's our ground, twist them together, and then tighten that screw back down. Then with our breakaway switch, it really just depends on your setup where to mount it. I'm just using a factory bolt here on the bumper. This way I can rotate it whenever it's not in use, and it kind of gives a nice clean look. There's two wires running off the back of that. You'll have to route those up into the engine bay, and they'll come into this plug here. So we have quite a lot of slack, so I'll just bundle all of that up. We're going to bring it back to our shadow box and plug it into the matching plug here. Now we're going to run our airline from our cylinder to our booster box, and just coming from the factory, a lot of times these cuts aren't the greatest, so I'll just snip off the end before I plug it into our quick connect here, and this just simply pushes in until you kind of feel it click. And then if you were to come through and say you have a leak or something, you need to repair it, just push it on that cowler and it'll pop out. So slide this end into our cylinder. Then the other end is going to run right over here to our booster box. So just kind of line it up. I'll leave a little bit of slack just because I don't want it to be super tight. And I'll use my hose cutters to snip that off and plug it in the same way on this one. Now with our vehicle, we do not have a vacuum brake booster, so that's when you would usually tie into those factory lines. But on this end here, the kit comes with this rubber cap. Since we are not able to tie into that vacuum, we'll just install that. And with that installed, we can plug our booster box and our shadow box together with the 6-post plugs. So just push it in until it clicks on one end, and once again we have a lot of slack since I mounted these so close together, so we'll just bundle it up. You definitely don't want to cut into this and re-splice it or anything, but I'll get this end plugged in also. Now we'll take the power wires for our shadow box here, and before we hook it up, you want to make sure that you remove the fuse. But we're going to hook up the fuse side to the positive on our battery, and the other side is going to go to a ground. So I'm going to use this nut right here. It's 10 millimeter on ours. Get that removed. I'll slip the ring terminal underneath it, tighten it back down, and with our positive, we'll have to find a good place on our battery post to hook that up. So pop this cap off. And we can use any of these slots here, so if you have an extra nut laying around that matches these threads, you can do that. But I'm just going to remove this nut and slide our ring terminal under it. And tighten it back down, just like we did on the ground. And then we're ready to install that fuse again. And with the fuse, you just want to make sure that you line it up with the slots and push it firmly and put your cover on. Now with the fuse plugged in, you're probably noticing a flashing blue light here. That's just telling us that our towed vehicle battery is good. It's fully charged. So now at this point, we can pull our breakaway switch out and make sure everything's working properly. When you pull the breakaway switch, you'll notice 3 flashing red LEDs here. That's just telling you that it's in breakaway mode. So double check that, make sure that's looking right. And then also go into the inside of the vehicle, check out your brake pedal, make sure that it's pulling, and hold it. Now we pulled over to our motorhome. We're ready to set up our Bullseye wireless monitor. So to put this shadow box here in pairing mode, what you want to do is take the breakaway cable and unplug it. So that'll change to a blue and white flashing light. Now we'll go inside our motorhome to the Bullseye and get that paired. Now we have the Bullseye. We'll plug it into our included USB-C cord, which you can plug into your motorhome. It's going to power right up for us. And then this first screen, it's going to scan, and then it will show our device. You can double check your serial number on the side of your shadow box, but we'll click on that. That is ours. And we're all set. So we can hit done. And now we just need to reinsert that cable, and then we can dial in our settings. Depending on the size of your motorhome, you may not be able to get a signal all the way from the front of your motorhome back to the towed vehicle. That's where the Bullseye range extender comes into play. With our setup, we have a small van style RV, so it's not super necessary, especially since our battery's actually farther forward than the monitor itself. But hooking it up is very easy. You just have to locate your battery. The red alligator clip will go onto your positive post. The black one will go onto your negative. And then you'll see that green light flash. That means it's working, it's sending a signal. And there's going to be some sticky tape on the back of it. So just find a nice smooth surface to mount it, clean it off with some alcohol, and then adhere this to it so it stays. Then we'll go through and do our initial setup. So we'll hit this stop sign logo here that says brake. And with our vehicle, it's going to be non-vacuum brake type. So I'll hit that. And we can scroll down a bit. This is where you would adjust your brake pressure. We're just going to keep it on normal. You can take it on a test drive and really get it dialed in. And then it's just got some info for you there. And we can do a brake test. You would have to drive up to 30 miles per hour to get that inertia switch engaged in order to do that brake test. A few other things to show you with the Bullseye here. If you hit this plus sign, that's going to show you your towed vehicle's battery level and your motorhome. So that's really nice to have. You can just every once in a while monitor the battery life that you have, make sure it's charging right. And then there's a drive mode here. So while you're driving, after you get everything set up, you can have this screen popped up, and this is going to allow you to manually brake. So say you're going down a steep incline or you're feeling some sway and you want to engage the brakes in your towed vehicle, you'll just hit that button. That's going to hit those brakes to whatever level you've set it to, so you can get a nice, safe, steady drive. Other than taking our rig on a test drive and getting our settings dialed in, that's going to do it for our look at and installation of the Curt RVi Shadow 2 flat tow braking system.